Baiju, on behalf of everyone today, welcome to TechSparks. This is your fourth presence in TechSparks, and we're very excited to be having this conversation with you. Thank you. Thanks for joining. So I'm going to this year straight jump into a philosophical question. Baiju, in our country, in India, when we look at teachers, look at sage Vashisht in Ramayana, Dronacharya in Mahabharata, when we look at teachers, then we think that these are phenomenal, revered people. We look up, we idolize them. But when it comes to money, when it comes to material wealth, it's looked down, it is chewed upon. What has changed today? And I want to bring this into the conversation because I think you have played a phenomenal role in something that is changing, where teachers today are making money. And that has happened with EdTech, which has happened with you at front and center. Tell me this change in the philosophical, sociological paradigm in our country which is happening now.
So, as I always tell, the golden age of teachers is coming back. Teachers have always played an integral part in shaping our future, in shaping a country's future. It's for most part of it, it has remained underappreciated. Teachers themselves underestimate the impact which they create on their students. It takes 10, 20, 30 years for them to realize. I have seen multiple times how my parents are overjoyed when they meet a old student after 20, 30 years. That's something which money can't buy. Now, on the earning potential of teachers, like with technology playing an important role, world has become the classroom. Today, anyone can become a teacher. You can teach anything you want to, whether it's the math, science, or even something which you are very passionate about. You can just go online and start teaching. You can always find if you are a teacher by choice, you will always find your students. So that way, it's the right time that we learn how to appreciate what teachers do. All of us fondly remember those 2-3 teachers, those who made such a big difference in our lives, not necessarily teaching us the subjects for exams, but more importantly, sometimes like just motivating us, like to go for it, even when we ourselves wouldn't have believed in us. Some of those teachers, they make such a big difference with a small gesture. It's like we realize the value of that maybe later, right? And so it's an underappreciated and such a satisfying job. I'm very happy to know that we are playing a very small role in changing that perception, and not just creating a lot of these celebrity teachers, but most importantly, the bigger impact is in Baiju's Future School today. There are 12,000 plus women teachers, those whom otherwise wouldn't have become teachers. Now, these are not teachers, those who are leaving schools and coming and teaching with us. They are, in most cases, they are high quality graduates, those who are underemployed and in some cases unemployed. And all 12,000 are women teachers. And it creates such a big impact in terms of giving them flexibility, convenience, and making them being able to contribute to the workforce, which is, unfortunately, we have a very bad ratio when it comes to how women graduates actually play a big role in our workforce, right? And that's a untapped opportunity. India can, just like how the cost arbitrage, more importantly, quality arbitrage, which we brought in with our engineers for the world, there is a real chance of us to play that role in teaching the world. And I'm very happy to say that we have been able to just start that. Hopefully, it will become a revolution.
Wow, Baiju, this is phenomenal. We have 150 million women missing in the workforce, and what today you are saying that you've got 12,000 women teachers who are today working with Baiju. This is phenomenal, and this is to everyone. We are hearing this for the first time at TechSparks, and very, very encouraging. And that brings me to the second question. In India, at least in the startup entrepreneurship ecosystem, and you have been a part of it and a builder of it. When we talk about startups, we say, oh, we are Uber of X, right? Indian entrepreneurs, they say we are Uber of X, or we are Lambda School of Y. But we heard in LATAM someone saying that, our app is Baiju of X. And that to me is the change that has happened. And that to me is the change of the Indian entrepreneurs, Indian startup ecosystem, and you, Baiju. How would you attribute this?
It's very humbling to hear that. Though I would want to believe that when they talk about Baiju's of X, what they mean is high quality courses, programs where we find the right balance between keeping it engaging, making it easy for students, without forgetting the fact that at the end of the day, it's about creating learning outcomes by making them like the subject and by helping them improve and creating that love for learning, teaching them the most important skill of learning how to learn. And if they are talking about that, I'm very happy that it's also a huge responsibility when people talk about us as pioneers in a sector. And for a change, I'm very sure that this will be one of those sectors which will be defined and created and hopefully owned by Indian startups. And yeah, it's just the beginning. There's a long way to go, but I'm happy to see where it's going.
I'm going to digress now and ask you something which I've always wanted to ask. Anyone watching you, listening to you, can't miss the teacher in you. And today you have started on a soft note, but I know that the passionate you is going to take over very soon. Do you miss teaching? Like, we hear about the fundraise, so many expansions, acquisitions, so many things are happening at BYJU'S, and I'm sure you're running, driving all those things. Do you miss teaching today?
To be very honest, I miss teaching in or being for perception. I used to take those live sessions in large auditoriums and stadiums. I do miss those sessions. But teaching and learning has always been part of what we do now, whether it's math, science, or any other subject. So always hungry to learn. So and the best way to learn is actually by teaching others. Today it might not be math, but what I am very happy and something which I'll share with everyone is the fact that most of what I used to do a year back, today I am able to get other people to do that, and that's also teaching. So it's in a way it's very important for founders, entrepreneurs, or co-founders to not get attached to doing everything themselves, and that's the only way if you really want to scale and create a much larger impact and the bigger and better impact. It's very important to get people let go of things. And so in a way, though, I miss teaching students in those large auditoriums and stadiums. Learning and teaching, they're very closely related, right? It's like you learn when you teach, and then it's so. But I do miss, to be very honest, I miss those teaching days. It's not that but I'll say that I don't teach anymore, not because I don't have time. I would want to believe I have created teachers who are far better than me. So
we've been hearing about the M&As, right? Last 12, 18 months, there have been White Hat Junior. Let me read all the names. Great Learning, Akash Institute, Tinker, and Epic. Phenomenal, and again, very good for the ecosystem. But I want to understand from you, is this a strategy? Is it a deliberate strategy to create house of brands and have a bouquet of offerings across all the learning spectrum?
Now, when it comes to learning, solving all the challenges, even thinking that we can solve all challenges by ourselves, it's foolish, because we know what we are good at. We also know what we don't know. And knowing this, and this is also continuation of my previous answer, it's for all builders, it's like that builder's mindset, you need to get out of that, right? If you need to start trusting others, that you also need to understand that there are a lot more people, those who are smarter than you, those who are better than you in certain other things, and finding that right balance of what you create inside and what you actually integrate and then scale is very important. And having that mindset is important. If once you decide to actually buy, and when you take that decision of build versus buy, once you decide to buy, it's also very important to know that you are buying not just a platform, but also a lot of entrepreneurial mindset. So what we have been able to do, and that is what is accelerating growth for us in India, in our new markets, across all important segments, whether it's school segment, test prep segment, or the reskilling, upskilling segment for professionals, is the fact that with all these integrations, and that's why we want to call them not acquisitions, with all these integrations, we are also getting access to, it's almost like you have the 6 co-founders or the founding members who started with me, they're all still there. They are the founders, those who are homegrown. And today I can easily say that we have 6 more co-founders, those who joined as partners along the journey, and they increase they have significantly increased the founder mentality in the company, and that is the most important thing. Where companies struggle to scale, not necessarily because of external reasons. You'll find a lot of cases founders themselves losing that founder mentality, and that's why in our case, for us, this is a very long journey. I always tell that what we're trying to do here is not something which like trying to create something which will last for decades. And for that, it's important that like an individual alone or the initial co-founders alone cannot do these many things. So integrations play a big role in, like, they're all very complementary. Those things, these companies have helped us to enter new segments, new markets, and we've been able to like, once you have access to capital, buying companies is easy, but integrating is a very different game. It's not by chance that we are making them work. There is no scope for complacency to, just because we made the first three very, very successful, you can't say that the next two will work, because all of them are very different, very complex, and but we'll be at it till we make it work.
From your answer, I want to ask this question. Cross-border cultural integration is tough, even for the largest, biggest multinational companies. Today, you've done that. Tell us from your playbook, what is it that is working when it comes to cross-border integrations that you're doing?
Cultural integration is kind of overrated in these acquisitions and integrations, because it's the fact that if you are buying a company for a reason, it's very important that you make sure that that company continues. It has its own culture, and what got them from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, you need to make sure that that continues if you are buying. Like, otherwise, it's better to build. So we make sure that we don't integrate, we don't change the way the companies work. We make sure that and in most cases, I've heard from founders after coming on board that they have more entrepreneurial freedom than what they had before. And then we have a finding that, right, it's only a thin line between what you can say it's outside support and inside intervention. We've been able to find that balance right. And it's no, again, you take a look at any of our like significant integrations which we have done in the last 2 to 3 years. Like by you measure that, you try measuring the like whether how we have created value for each other. It'll easily be like all those integrations today. You will know that they've been very, very complementary. So, and objective way of looking at this is, and this is so in a way, when you have access to capital, and when you are in a segment where which is ripe for positive disruption, it's deploying the capital in ways which can create more value for our existing user base. It's capitalizing on the distribution which we have built in India. And when it comes to integrations in US, it's the other way around. We are depending on those platforms for distribution. More importantly, those founders for expertise, like, because they know the students in those markets very well, and that's how it's been complementary. So, and like a lot of like I believe a lot of other founders, they don't explore this option, though it's in sectors like ours where it's like it's always better to find the right balance between organic and inorganic growth. And then without it also kind of keeps you ahead of the game when it comes to innovation. You know that like the platform, like it can be for platforms, it can be for distribution, it can be for a new subject. And this is one of those sectors where technology is making an intervention, and very recently, and there's a long way to go. Like next 10, 20, 30 years is going to be, you will see everything improving, how students learn, how teachers teach, how institutions go online. And yeah, so it's like excited to be in like the intersection of obviously everyone is bullish on India, everyone is bullish on education, and we are at the intersection.
Baiju, you've been in the learning space, you have built this category, if I may say so. What are some of the insights and anecdotes you could share with us when it comes to the learners, when it comes to kids who are learning? And have you seen anything change in the last 10 years and in India, and also now that you have exposure in other markets?
So in terms of, there's a lot of mindset change which is happening, which eventually took a pandemic like this for all stakeholders to realize like what online learning can be, whether it's students like trying out online learning like never before, teachers using digital tools from the initial days, struggling to use even the, like initial days, I've heard teachers talking about they're struggling to create PPTs. Today, you will see them using a lot of technology platforms, which makes it easy for them, which enables them to become better teachers. And institutions are going online, willing to go, like offering more and more online programs, and extending the reach and the like, and a lot of them at a fraction of the cost than what they offer in the university. And so that way, uh, all like you across segments, whether from kids learning segment to school segment, test prep, competitive exam segment, to which is like even the most conventional test prep segment, which is an offline first segment, the movement towards online is getting accelerated. And that's the reason why the hybrid programs, where we find the best of both, because there are a lot of things which can be done better online, and there are a few things which can only be done offline, right? So how do we find the right balance? And since students have experienced like online learning in the last 1.5 years, a lot of learning at home will remain online, though schools will go back offline. Though the ideal format is where like everybody can find the right blended format. What should be online, what should be offline, how much should be online, how much should be offline will just get will be defined by students, and those who are willing to learn that, like those like any company which takes a student centric approach is here to win.
Imagine I want to foray into a different segment, which is continuous learning and skill development. You know, a lot of venture capitalists that we talk to say that in India, this space, right, this space is not big, and in terms of the scale companies have seen has not been big. And as Indians, we don't believe in continuous learning, or that learning will help us professionally, and it's not a big market, paying market. You forayed into this, and then you integrated Great Learning. Want to understand from you, what is real about this space and what is exaggerated? Right? Like there's so much of perception about us as Indians, we won't pay for this, or it doesn't lead to an outcome. There's so many things.
Yeah, I won't agree to. So willingness to pay for education is very high among Indians, because it's so ingrained in our culture, because that's still the only way for us to make it big, right? So ability to pay and willingness to spend, second one has a much higher weightage. Now, when it comes to the segment you are talking about, the need for upskilling and reskilling, that's increased mainly in the last 5-6 years, and due to the fast evolving nature of work, where routine jobs are getting automated, right, and decisions are becoming more and more data driven. So upskilling, I agree, it's a relatively new space. I believe it's a wide space in terms of the opportunity is huge. It's an online first segment, because for most of these professionals, for them to do reskilling or upskilling, they don't have time or finding something in the vicinity is a big challenge. So compared to the test prep segment, which is an offline first segment, this is an online first segment. So in terms of like a lot of people didn't see this trend coming. There are multiple $100 million revenue companies globally in this sector today, clearly showing that, including Great Learning, and that's a proof that it is becoming more and more mainstream today. Now, among the young professionals, the gap between traditional university education and what industry wants, right? And that gap has created the need for skill development. And there are 400 million plus knowledge workers, those who will require some kind of reskilling, upskilling over the. A lot of people are yet to realize it, but if they are not willing to, like it will be very difficult to stay relevant in terms of, because we are living in a world where credentials are important to that will get you the first job, but competency will take over, and competencies will have a lot more importance than credentials for career growth. And that's why, from an opportunity point of view, it's tremendous potential for that particular segment. Now we have strong presence in school segment in India, and like significant presence in US. This is one of those sectors where we are going to depend on the Great Learning and a strong management team and founder, which came through that integration and in scaling into that segment. Continuous learning, obviously, it's definitely not done for fun. And I know that I agree, Indian learners are price and value conscious. When they see value, they are willing to pay, and they will do it because it's required.
you know, you are sitting defining this space, if I may say so, and I think everyone will agree when I say that I'm not even exaggerating the way you've built the edtech space. I want to understand, raha kya, ab bacha kya? Matlab, of course, one has to go deep, but what are some of the white spaces, right? Like you're hearing about hobby-based community classes. It could be SaaS for teachers, SaaS platforms, and something. You know, that what are some of the spaces that you see from your vantage point that are left to be tapped, and you have not already tapped it?
No, that's like in terms of we tapping into the opportunity, it's like even in our strongest segment, we have low single digit percentage penetration. So the opportunities with more and more segments moving from offline to online or offline to a hybrid format, uh, you will see that like all these sectors can grow. Any company which is in the sector or getting into the sector, whether it's for making it easy for students, not just curricular but on the co-curricular side, or the important future skills. Now high school education will like you will see that a lot of parents, like once the companies realize that it's actually about competency and not about credentials, it might take 5-10 years. You will also see like all these future
Yeah.
skills like coding and robotics and all of them, like students start doing it from early on and more, and those, though the curriculums will struggle to catch up with the changing requirements of the industry, the this model online allows students to learn whatever they want from whoever they want to, right? And that's one big opportunity. So almost every space, if you ask me, is a white space. Whether it's the school segment, a lot can be done to help teachers or enable teachers to become better. Whether it's in a like to a large extent, we are redefining the way students learn at home, but there's an opportunity to redefine the way teachers teach in a classroom. Though it'll be slow because
Yeah.
it's B2B and there is always it's you can't scale in B2B at the pace at which you can scale a tech-enabled B2C company. But the opportunity is there. Might not be as big because it will be slightly growth cannot be this you can't grow the segment this fast. But a lot can be done in like changing the way teachers teach in a classroom, in a physical classroom itself, where you like helping them personalize, helping them interact with the students in a better way. Online classes allows, contrary to what people think, online it's actually easier to interact, better to interact. At least it's easy to know whether the students are getting the answer or not. In an actual classroom, it's very difficult for teachers to, even if there are 20 students in a classroom, it's impossible to personalize. So personalization using technology is a big opportunity, both at home and in classrooms. And for institutions to go online and start off both on the higher education segment, finding creating the right kind of courses for which will help graduates to get or find a job and get a job. So from school segment to, and once they get a job, reskilling, upskilling, right? So on, like there's an opportunity around skilling and there's an opportunity around reskilling, upskilling. So there is the segment from 4 to 40-year-olds is open in terms of, and the best part is a lot of these things can be, you can make it work in India, and in these curriculums are global. Like coding, you just need one global curriculum, and where they need teachers in India, you can find in India can be the global talent pool for teachers. So starting in India is a huge advantage in this sector.
I have asked you every time I've interviewed you, but today I'm again going to ask you. So you are going to acquire more companies, and what I'm hearing is personalization in learning is an interesting area.
Like to be very honest, this is a sector which is grossly underinvested. This is like, you see, there are not many companies globally, those who have even invested like even a couple of $100 million in creating educational content, whereas there are so many entertainment platforms, those who invest billions of dollars every year, right? And this is such an important sector, which and using technology is the only way you can solve challenges at scale, because there is no way. The governments have been spending billions of dollars, but grassroots level, you can't blame. It's very, very, very difficult to implement. You can't build more schools, get teachers into our classrooms, and things have worsened in the last 10-20 years because there are a lot more better paying job options in cities. So in our small towns today, like forget about finding good teachers. Sometimes finding teachers itself is a challenge, and you can't solve it by and though there are, like, on one side there are so many of these high quality graduates, those who are not able to contribute to the workforce, and that's where online plays a role, not just in teaching students in India, but also like these teachers teaching students at least in international English speaking markets. So
Yeah.
opportunity is huge. So we will uh, we will always look out for because for us this is just the beginning, and there's a real opportunity to create a 100 billion, 200 billion dollar education company. There's nothing, there's no company like that globally, right? And it's a shame that such an important sector, it's and the only reason it's not there is that finding the right format, using technology as an enabler. Not many companies have even attempted it for whatever be the reasons. Right? This is a sector where maybe initial years investors have lost a lot of money, but now obviously everyone expects edtech to be big over the next 10-20 years.
Yeah, and then we are hoping that, and then you are doing it, but we are hoping that you define not just now for India, but for the world, right? Like, why can't Byju be the most phenomenal edtech player in the world? Right? We've grown up with the Googles and the Facebook. Why couldn't it be Byju for the world? And that brings me to the question. We are today, this year, in the year of IPOs, and it's been, as I said, it's been raining IPOs, a lot of announcements coming in. And Byju, you have gone on record to say that maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line, you are going to look at it. And I don't want to today ask you about when you are going for an IPO, but I want to ask you a far more fundamental question, which is, how do you see startups and young businesses being ready for the IPO market? Because you are under public scrutiny, and there have been conflicts we've seen with Tesla, with Elon Musk, the listing, the unlisting, and the challenges. Do you think as companies we are ready for the public scrutiny? And how do you think entrepreneurs and businesses should look at IPO?
IPO is obviously when it's a natural transition when the company becomes big. Now, if you see all the large companies today, where like large public companies today were startups maybe 10 years, 15 years back, right? It's not that long. And now Indian markets are also opening up to the idea, or like, and will start valuing companies, those who are finding the right balance between growth and profitability. Because in today's age, it's very important to create not just so it cannot be growth at any cost, but if the fundamentals are strong, or companies with strong fundamentals, strong market position, and growth are favored by investors, whether they are public or private. And a lot of these things are getting mirrored exactly like how it's in the US markets, though the depth of the Indian market is like, we will know, the time will tell. But I'm very optimistic that with more and more successful listings, and that is very encouraging for the ecosystem, that will encourage more and more entrepreneurs or more and more people to become entrepreneurs. And every IPO success is even Zomato's success helps Swiggy, right? That's how it is, right? And it's like the best part is now in today's markets, public investors understand the trade-off between growth and profitability, and they're savvy enough to discern the quality of the revenue or quality of the growth. And like if the companies have strong market leadership, strong unit economics, like which we have, they're sought after by investors. In fact, a lot of our investors today are public market investors. For good number of them, this has been their first investment in education, first in India. So we have been initial days, it was a big challenge to convince them. Like we had to convince them on three things: India, education, and our business model. Today, like all three of them are so favorable that access to capital won't be a challenge for like next many years for Indian companies, and we should capitalize on this. There's no lack of ambition among the Indian entrepreneurs. It's this trifecta of access to capital, ambition, and normally sometimes they are related, and skill, right? If you can find the right balance between these three, nothing can stop you from doing what you want to do, right? And obviously, if you are building it for long term, and it's important to find the right balance between like what you need to do for today and what you need to do for like 2-3 years down the line. And that's how all the large companies today, like especially on the tech startups or tech enabled companies, are built that way. And if there can be an Alibaba, Tencent, multiple $100 billion companies in China, there is no reason why we can't have a few of them making and competing at the global stage, right? And I'm sure you'll find many global champions because Indians play such a crucial role in building these large companies in US. I'm sure we are like India is ready. India is ready, and the markets are ready for, you will see a lot of global champions coming out of India.
You know, Baiju, when you're answering this question, no, I've been looking at you and I have to ask you this question. That, you know, a boy from Kerala, where there was no street, with that kind of upbringing and growing up where you grew, आज इतना बड़ा ambition और इतना audacious ambition and not relenting. How does that happen, right? Like how? Like what goes inside your brain and heart and mind and soul that you become you?
So you met me maybe 5 years back, 5 or 6 years back. One which we constantly strive, and that's become the company culture, is how do we think big, right, and bigger and bigger and better. So it's in that now if you are doing things which you truly believe in, right, and if you are passionately pursuing that with relentlessly, if you're pursuing that, there is no reason now. Like it's never about looking at others and trying to do a cut copy paste model, right? In a segment like ours where there is no playbook for success, that's an advantage and a disadvantage. But if you are willing to learn from users, and if you are like hungry to learn, like if you ask me what is that I want to be like 5 years down the line, 2 years down the line, my answer will be very simple. I want to be more ambitious and more aspirational. That the hunger stays, right? And like I've been doing this now for like teaching, something which I started when I was from school days. One thing I can tell you, that what we preach is what we practice. Like this is the this is the only way like my son will learn, right? That kind of conviction gives you so much confidence and to build to think very long term. That thinking long term is our biggest competitive advantage, nothing else. And this has attracted, so like though I talked about a lot of other complementary nature on why we do these integrations, one thing which is like maybe slightly superficial, but you look at all the entrepreneurs, those who came on board the Byju's ecosystem, you'll realize that they like within a matter of weeks they'll start doing things, thinking about things in a much at a very different scale. We'll make them ambitious if not anything else. And then by giving them that support and making sure that like it's the fear of failure is what stops a lot of entrepreneurs from, a lot of us from achieving our true potential, right? And it's not difficult, right? It's like it's now this is maybe it's like, see, when you come from a small village or a small town, I think that's a big advantage. That's what makes us extremely positive, highly. There's nothing to lose. Like I always say that I normally say, put me in local, put me anywhere, I'll come out of it, right? There's nothing to lose. So like the opportunity. So it's not difficult. And this is, if you ask me, this if we can be more ambitious 10 years down the line, and that's like, and if you want to be more ambitious, you need to make sure that the founder mentality stays, right? And it's not about like founders get undue credit for what they do. But we have created an ecosystem where entrepreneurs can thrive. Not just the founders, those who come through these integrations, lot more founders, those who are created in the ecosystem. Maybe they don't get the credit for whatever be the reason, right? Entrepreneurs get undue credit for what they do.
No, but I have to say this to everyone watching, that you know, for every small town person among challenges, and then we have so many challenges in our country, while everything is amazing also, you know, you are someone, one has to look and constantly look back, because the ambition is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That to me is the story, because your backstory to your forward story to your present story. You know, Baiju, I want to ask you, what does it mean for your parents and your family circle and people? What do they see? Do they see a different you? Do they see a changed you?
It's an unfair advantage if you can be yourself, right? Because if you don't forget the initial reasons, what is helping you create that level of impact, I'm sure it's actually an unfair advantage. So I've been surrounded, like for them, I am still like, if I get an hour, I'll go out and play, right? There is no difference. And so it's not difficult to stay on the ground. If you are like not changing the people around you, it's like for them, there is no difference between like someone who played cricket with them and still play cricket with them. But if you keep on changing people around you, that is when they look at you in a different way, right? For them, there is no difference. It's exactly the same. And that helps you stay like it's easy. It's not it's like these things are overrated actually. So it's so easy to be yourself, and that's an unfair advantage, because people expect you to be different, people expect you to act in certain ways, but nothing has changed other than, yeah, today, like, because maybe able to make a much bigger impact, helping a lot more people. And that's the, at the end of the day, it's like, I never started this as business. It ended up becoming one, and it ended up, it's becoming bigger and bigger. But still, if you ask me, success for us is still like 10 years out, 20 years out. The day we call it a success, I'm telling you, that then the game is over.
I think I'll keep talking to you every year, and it will keep on extending, and you'll keep on achieving, but the success will keep on becoming bigger milestones. Personally, what is the milestone? What's the personal milestone, next personal milestone that you're going after?
It's a lot of times it's very difficult to like differentiate because when you are like I do things which I love, right? I normally say that like I'm engaged and I'm active for at least 18 to like sometimes up to 20 hours a day. It's not that I'm working for 18 hours. I do things which I love, like which is spending time with the family, work, playing whenever I get time, multiple games. So on the personal side, it's like just like anybody else. It's like, if you ask me, like for me, it's very simple. It's not about like if I can be fitter than what I am today in 10 years, that's a personal ambition. I like to be very honest. I have 2 boys. I need a girl child. So it's just like anybody else, right? It's like there is like on a, and but more importantly, as I've already told you that if like even like 10 years down the line, if I can be hungrier than today, more ambitious, more aspirational, things will be very exciting.
Again, a last very philosophical question, and this is again for all the startups and entrepreneurs. When you're an entrepreneur doing something, you have ambition, you're restless, you're going after things. How do you maintain that inner balance, inner peace, inner joy, right? Because एक तरफ से chase कर रहे हैं, दूसरी तरफ से how do you feel settled within your own self?
Easy again, in like I told, see, for me, it's like, for me, I'm fortunate that my passion intersected with a real need, right? So as I told you, it's like what I am doing is what we do at home. My son learns from the learning app. For him, learning math from Byju's Future School is his primary mode of learning. And this is what we are promoting, right? And that conviction comes from, so it's the conviction on these formats is from within. Now, in terms of what is like, it's kind of, to answer that, it's also an easy answer. There is no scope for complacency, right? When things are going so well, there's no scope for complacency. Now, under difficult times, or when things are not going like the way you want, there is absolutely no scope for complacency, because you are doing, this is my life's dream. So there is no, I'm fortunate that I'm able to, like, so I'm having a lot of fun doing this, whether it's exact like I'm at my best when I play football, when I play cricket. It's exactly like, for me, doing business is for fun. And obviously when you do things for fun, right, chances are that, and that's why you will be able to do it for decades and not for years. And when you have that approach with an intent to make it work, you will make it work whatever it takes, right? And I will call it a success. And I'll finish with there is this big aspiration of creating the largest for-profit education company. I'm sure we have a good chance of doing that. But on the other side, there is also an equally big opportunity and responsibility to create one of the largest not-for-profit initiatives in the sector. Something which we started in the last 12 months, Byju's Education for All. Especially in the last 6 months, we have given out more free licenses, making a big difference on the other end of the spectrum for the bottom 10-20% of the students with multiple partners.
Wow.
And that, like, there our target was like making a difference, changing the way students learn for 5 million students by 2025. But the response which you have got, I'm sure we will raise the bar, and it's always been on that. And this one, I'm sure it's and if you're able to do both at scale, I will call it a success. It's again maybe 10 years, 15, 20 years later. But as I told you, there is no scope for complacency, right? When you are, because when you are living your dream, there is no scope for complacency.
On behalf of everyone today, thank you. What an inspiring, energizing, and What a meaningful conversation. Thank you. Thank you. And we are very proud to have you in our country as an entrepreneur that we all look up to. Thank you. Thanks a lot.